I hate Joe Biden.
Yeah, he's the worst.
It's not even him. It's just the whole coterie of things around him. Like him and his doddering self, but then everything that's behind him that's like, that's not doddering. That's so
It's so
menacing.
in your face of like, here's an actual puppet.
Yeah.
Like you can't even
And I just,
calling out to a dead woman the other day.
and the idea that somehow this guy from liberals is seen as the antidote to fascist Trump in any way. Like it's just, that just drives me nuts a little bit.
I guess. I mean, lesser two evils is what they still say.
But it is not.
No, 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 no. Yeah, this thing's horrifying.
Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Barco, a co-host, teacher in socialist and election and right-wing teacher. Jessica, Kenny is missing for this week. I think he is in Mexico, right? Both of you had said that he's gone. I wasn't here last week, so I don't know. People can find us on online at what-s-left.webnode.com. You can find that link to our blog and the episode notes, and you can also find our personal social media handles as at Don Eduardo Abarca and at ZepDKE, and Jess's Twitter handle at JHomie89. Please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications, and share your favorite episode wherever you found this episode, and everything will have it in the description box or the episode notes of.
And this is probably going up late, right? Because we were in YouTube jail.
It will go up late on YouTube. So if you're seeing this on YouTube, we were in jail for a week because of an interview we did with Amanda about being anti-vax, why she is, and they're like, you can't do that, medical misinformation. And so, but we'll be up in Rumble, on BitChute, so folks should remember, if you don't see us, always go there.
All right. Well, let's get started then for this week's topic. Andy, why don't you share what the topic of this week's episode will be, since you were the one who suggested it?
Yeah, so I had, I'm on all of us, I think, are on the Workers and Students for Choice group, and there had been something about Joe Biden's transhumanist order or transhumanist project, and I saw that subject heading, and I was like, I'm sure that's something like that, but I didn't pay much mind. But when I was on the National Coalition for Health Integrity meeting, one of the people's mentioned, hey, had anybody seen the latest Biden executive order? And I wasn't sure what he was talking about because I didn't link two and two. And he basically posted this. It was this thing. I'll read the title. The executive order 14081. Advancing biotechnology and biomanufacturing innovation for a sustainable, safe, and secure American bioeconomy. And I'll just read the one quote that grabbed me. It's the one that everyone's been hearing. In it basically, in the very beginning, it says, we, the United States, need to develop genetic engineering technologies and techniques to be able to write circuitry for cells and predictably program biology in the same way in which we write software and program computers. Unlock the power of biological data, including through computing tools and artificial intelligence, and advance the science of scale-up production while reducing the obstacles for commercialization so that innovative technologies and products can reach markets faster. So in short, basically turn humans into tools, into computers, and then of course turn computers into AI, turn them into humans, and of course the last part is eliminate any obstacles to the development of these technologies. So that's the shortest summary of that's one paragraph of this monster.
When I read that paragraph, I heard it in Klaus Schwab's accent and voice. It was so disturbing.
And I mean, it's just so bald-faced, to basically say the way they want to get in on the human body. But there's more to say, but that's just the beginning. So I was like, hey, we got to talk about this. Now, this was before the Nord Stream pipeline was blown up by the United States, which is what I believe has happened. But frankly, I think all these things are related. And we may or may not be bringing that up, but I think there's enough to go in here as to what is the U.S., what do we make of this, Jessica and Eduardo. So I just figured you guys would, y'all would read it and then see what sort of things really stuck out for you. Because I think every one of us saw that paragraph and we're like, boom, but there's other things in there as well. And each of us, I think, has kind of gone down our own road of looking more deeply into other areas. So maybe we can bring up today.
Yeah. This was disturbing to read. I mean, even just the title that you read, like when I read for a sustainable, safe, and secure, I was like, those three words, I'm already terrified. Like, I don't ever want to hear that in the context of the American state or, certainly not executive order, right? Which is without even the semblance of, representation or voting or whatever. I guess one thing I'll add just to kind of kick it off, I thought this really just crystallized how should I put it, the seamless segue from COVID into climate agenda stuff. Like even the paragraph right before the one that you quoted, Andy, although the power of these technologies is most vivid at the moment in the context of human health, right? COVID, biotechnology and biomanufacturing can also be used to achieve our climate and energy goals, improve food security and sustainability, secure our supply chains, and grow the economy across all of America. And there's a lot more to that, and just like especially later in it, the heavy emphasis on like biomass and climate smart solutions. Very interesting way, lexicon. But yeah, I guess that's my opening comment. Eduardo, you want to jump in?
I mean, it's clear if anyone reads it. This is everyone. Andy, we'll put the link of this whole executive order that is on the White House website in our episode notes. I think that people sometimes have seen us as kooks, sometimes have seen us as mad people. We're conspiracists. I didn't want to be a part of that for a long time when we were studying what's left. When we mention anything on the World Economic Forum, people, what do you like? Even I talked about that with some friends, and this stuff is beginning to be categorized as the conspiracist theorists, and even Biden talks about it in his speech. I think he says like we're extreme conspiracists because of QAnon and etc. And Trump is all a part of that, and we don't want to be a part of that, right? And so everybody's trying to seek the truth. Everybody's trying to figure out. Everyone's trying to call disinformation and misinformation and tag it, and it's hard to. I feel in my life it's hard to have any rational conversations because most people have been tainted by that, and they feel as if they're immediately blocked if they've done such a good job at people having any reasonable conversations about stuff like this. But I really do invite people, if you are somewhere on the edge, a liberal person, a recovering liberal person, as Kenny and I have said, if you can just look closely and read the fine print of this document. It says clearly here, there's nothing that I'm making up. There's nothing that I think YouTube would be censoring, because this is from the actual document. I'll quote it. The COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated the vital role of biotechnology and biomanufacturing in developing and producing life-saving diagnostics, therapeutics, and vaccines that protect Americans and the world, right? And it says, although the power of these technologies is most vivid at the moment in the context of human health, biotechnology and biomanufacturing can also be used to achieve our climate and energy goals, improve food security and sustainability. Doesn't that sound great? Secure our supply chains and grow the economy across all of America. This is not like this stuff sounds great, right? But once we start looking into the weeds, what I hope we'll do, because it looks like every one of us search something more specific, we'll get down to the nitty gritty of some specifics, right? Like we did with the sex tech episode. We weren't just talking about it in generalized. We mentioned concrete, specific examples, and I hope we will do that in this episode. I have a few examples I'll mention, such as semiconductor microchips, and this is the stuff that we're starting to see that is being pushed and accelerated forward. And I think that anyone now knows that 2020 was the year, the pivotal year that technology rose up in its most widely used form ever in our life, which is what we've always discussed, which is the fourth industrial revolution, right? Like we are in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution. There's, for people to go from like first, second, and like we're in the midst of it, data, technology, everything. So I'm not interested in like flat earth theories. I'm just talking to people who are like, I want people to realize that this is something that I don't know how we can people be blind or like what is it hard to put in your face like the truth about this stuff, which is this is as a result, it says there, it has demonstrated the vital role of biotechnology. Like COVID-19 was basically what we needed, the it factor for us to push forward these technologies. That's what they're saying. That's what the White House is saying. This is the president and their cronies and their minions and everybody who are saying this. They are saying COVID-19, we're not saying it, they're saying it, read it right there. COVID-19 has really showed us that we need to push forward biotechnology. We need to push forward biomanufacturing. And I invite everyone who were a part of the Occupy movement at the time when we were against GMOs, genetically modified organisms, and my permaculture people, and all of the hippies, and everybody on the left that were so into organic foods and no GMOs and all those labels and crops. I forget what I was for, that Prop 37, I think it was for California, to have labels on GMOs. I invite my friends to really, who are needle-loving people and who are, COVIDians, that I invite them to really look at this, because they are the ones who were at one point against GMOs. I've had these discussions online and offline where I've said to them, like, wait a minute, I thought we were on the same team about this. And suddenly you're the one who is for Moderna, for Pfizer, folks who are into biotech, folks who are into GMOs, folks that have been shown historically in other countries have experimented on African nations. So I don't know where did we go wrong or what people, but they've done, the USA and everybody, all the governments have done a very good job at propaganda to be able to disseminate this information and block people from even having a conversation. Like I feel everyone's brain is so blocked. You can't have any conversation. World Economic Forum, conspiracists. COVID-19 has, wait, hold on. COVID-19 was real. I don't know, that's debatable. But I'm just saying that it's 2020 was a pivotal year. So we'll get into the specifics, as I said, but this is what this has done for me. So I'm really grateful, Andy, that you decided to have us talk about this, because I don't know how this is just so naked to our eyes. What is their goal? These are the goals of the USA, and basically for the future of our life in artificial intelligence, right? Biotech, everything. I'm afraid of this stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And this thing is written as an executive order written to the U.S. state, and it's still written partially to the public. Because when they talk about safety, when they say terms like, we will not use this in ways that lead to accidental or deliberate harm to people, animals, or the environment. We're going to make sure that when we do this, it's going to help people, it's going to help animals, it's going to help the environment. I think people have to understand that is an 100% lie. It's the actual opposite. And one of the ways I know that is because their whole raison d'etre is, as you said, Eduardo, and you alluded to, Jessica, about the success of the COVID-19 vaccines as showing what is possible. Those vaccines, those vaccines have been an utter failure. They didn't stop transmission. They don't stop infection. They do, it's debatable whether it even did anything on symptoms. and they've had all sorts of adverse effects. I mean, if you just took it at its face in terms of having even the statement of a health thing, those vaccines, these mRNA products, are complete and utter health failure. The success of the vaccine, in their language, has to be the way they got everyone to buy in on it, the way they got everyone to essentially defend it, the way they got everyone to essentially bow down to it and praise it and take all their boosters despite the fact they're getting sick, and their ability to basically push everyone around on the globe and in this country, shove people out of jobs. That is, when they talk about success, that's what they mean. We were able to reorganize life in this country around these vaccines and to an end, and push it to an end that we wanted. Now, and Eduardo, you're exactly right to say that they're even almost acknowledging that they're using the COVID pandemic as an excuse. And I'm going to cite a document later from 2019 that they've been planning this thing for a long time, all these things that they're saying, but I'm just going to show a document from 2019 from the Department of Defense. The thing I want to point to in this document that was interesting to me, in addition, because each section is awful, I'm going to read from section 4, which was called Data for the Bioeconomy. And while I read this, I want you to think about, if you had ever had a question as to why millions, possibly billions of people had to have swabs shoved up their nose, this is the reason. Like, this is why all that was happening. So, data for bioeconomy. A, in order to facilitate development of the United States bioeconomy, my administration shall establish a data for the bioeconomy initiative, called the Data Initiative, that will ensure that high-quality, wide-ranging, easily accessible, and secure biological data sets can drive breakthroughs for the United States bioeconomy. This thing will identify the data types and sources to include genomic and multi-omic information that are most critical to drive advances in health, climate, energy, food, agriculture, biomanufacturing, as well as other bioeconomy-related R&D, along with any data gaps. Set forth a plan to fill any data gaps and make new and existing public data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable in ways that are equitable, standardized, secure, and transparent, and that are integrated with platforms that enable the use of advanced computing tools. They're basically admitting we're going to all these different labs, because this document is a public-private partnership venture, which is saying the U.S. is going to use all the figures from Operation Warp Speed to now work with all the people who have been collecting all that genomic data, make sure it's accessible to everyone. When we say to everyone who plans on developing AI that's going to use that for understanding trends in human genome, and for using it in all these different ways that they plan on using it for U.S. economy, U.S. power. I don't think you could see a more naked expression of that whole nose swab. It was just so we could collect your data.
Yeah, I didn't do a control find search on the number of times data is mentioned in this, but it's a lot. And I think just on the health thing, that, like you said, it's so naked. Like, it doesn't say we're going to be doing all this to improve health outcomes. It says, like, we're assessing how we can use biotechnology and biomanufacturing to achieve medical breakthroughs, reduce the burden of disease, and improve health outcomes. So it's not actually about improving health. It's like, no, how can we use these technologies to, on the surface? And so, I mean, it's actually unbelievable how many aspects, of the whole Fourth Industrial Revolution are folded into this, 10, 12 page document. I mean, even just like breezing through it, it's like you've got, anticipating threats and risks, right? Like, pre-crime is part of that. Marginalizing people like us, right? Dissenting views, anti-vaxxers, all of that. You've got constant reference to public-private partnerships. You've got the agricultural aspect of this, which I think we'll probably get into, but, increasing and protecting agricultural yields. That's, like Eduardo was referencing, that's monocropping, that's GMOs, that's monopolizing the market, pushing small farmers out, protecting against plant and animal pests, that's pesticides and herbicides, cultivating alternative food sources, right? Synthetic ones. And this is all, supposedly to address quote unquote societal goals, which again, first of all, it's an executive order, right? And it's like, when did we ever agree, even in the mainstream? Like, when did we ever agree? When did we ever even have this conversation that sequestering carbon is the solution to ecological crisis, right? Or that like harvesting everybody's genomic data is like even remotely okay, and B is actually helpful for any of the problems that we're trying to solve. It's just, yeah, it's unbelievable. And it goes on, and even just from a capitalist perspective, right? Like it's all reducing hurdles to commercialization, right? Buy more shit, money, keep the capital flowing, create markets. None of it's about improving health or helping the environment. And then another thing I was kind of tracking as I was reading through it is the repeated mentions of incentivizing in different contexts, right? And when I read that, like I think about the ways that people have been incentivized over the past few years to do things like take a vaccine, right? Or incentivizing companies, whether it's like on the corporate level or coming down from like state, governors, executive orders, and health mandates, right? Like it's such a good example of like what they mean by incentivize is coerce. And just structurally box out like any real alternatives.
Well, I'm in agreement with Jess. I just wanted to add to the sequestering carbon part. There is a way to sequester carbon. It's using trees.
Not cutting them down and burning them for biomass and then calling it green.
Exactly. And live oak is one of the most, it's a tree that's most efficient at sequestering carbon over the tree's lifetime. So there are ways to sequester carbon. They're just not going to be looked at because it's not going to accelerate all this biotech. Anyhow, but I'm in agreement with just that if you listen to the language, it's the language that Democrats use and liberals. It's all about sustainability. It's about, I was looking at and I can share the link to this, the White House summit, which was on the 14th of September on this executive order, which is on biotechnology and biomanufacturing. And the woman who, I feel like Alison McDowell when it comes to this woman who's on at this panel at the summit, I looked her up, and as I was saying, I felt a little bit like Alison McDowell going into the people and where they studied, and then who they're paid by, and what their background is, and all of that. I'm trying to practice that for when I participate in the group of the working group that she's a part of, which is a little intimidating for me. But here I go, and Dr. Alondra Nilsson was at this summit. And she's a policymaker, a writer, and academic, and she's very pro-identity politics and all about looking into reparations and race and reconciliation. She wrote this book on the social life of DNA. And so she is very much on board of all this biotech, and she's been visiting even like states like Idaho and talking with the mayor of Boise, and she just tweeted about her recent conversation on like the legislation, which was on the Chips and Science Act of 2022. And so she was discussing this, and she is very much pushing this agenda on biotech. And here's a woman that's being used, Black woman, I should say, because it's very important for Democrats. This is important for them. Pushing these incentives to produce semiconductors and the biotechnology of all of this as as it's making it attractive, appealing for people, because it's in the name of race equality, inequities, sustainability, the environment, environmental racism. And this is just trying to flavor it in a way that is attractive for people. That's what I got from that summit, how important that was to discuss it in that context, because that's what everybody's discussing. And I don't know if I think we said it, right? I think that climate change is being used now. That's the next thing, right? It's beyond just the virus and pandemics and all of that. It's now the crisis of the environment that I have long been, that's one of my beloved issues before. And I'm still, obviously want us to take care of our environment. But I've seen now how climate change is now being weaponized to, like in Nepal, to keep people indoors, separate people, and I think it's Nepal, one of those in Asia, South Asian countries, and it's now being used here in the USA to promote the idea that we need these biotechnologies for people like the climate activists that I think are going to be fooled by this, unfortunately. And so I guess for me, it's just seeing how people of color are being used for this, how this is being used in the name of racial equality. And that's what I got from that summit, how important that was before they began to discuss the details, right? I don't know, Andy, if you want to discuss, I have some examples, but I'll let someone else go. If we can discuss maybe some of the specifics of some of these things. But I just wanted to mention that first, because I want people to realize how we are tricked into moving forward with this and being okay with this, because we're all on board, supposedly, at least here in liberal SF, we're all on board, all of that, right? Of course, that sounds attractive.
Yeah, I want to stay with what you're saying about how they're using the cover of liberal progressivism and a kind of anti-racism, of an inclusivity. That language is definitely in here, and I want to quote it, and I want to. I've hated identity. I mean, identity politics I've seen as so poisonous, and this makes it seem, for me, even worse. So here's what they say in regards to education, because they bring it up as like, we're going to educate a whole new workforce and prepare them for this new economy, the bioeconomy. Also, I want to say what I think. Really, I think they want to turn people into microchips. Ultimately, that's going to be the thing. And I want to speak to why I think they're going to be doing it both to workers, because there's evidence that they're going to be doing it to their soldiers. But this is, they say the plan will also include focused discussion of historically Black colleges and universities, tribal colleges and universities, and minority serving institutions, and the extent to which agencies can use existing statutory authorities to promote racial and gender equity and support underserved communities. So here's how I see this. The executive order knows that they're writing this to Black, Latino women elites, and to a layer of almost middle class academic elite. And this elite knows that everyone's fucked. They know the world is going down in flames, at least for the poorest, and for the poorest Black communities, for the poorest white communities. They know those people are being herded into a prison. But what this kind of document is saying is, for a few of you educated Black people, educated women, for a few of you educated Native Americans, we have a little safe haven here to put you on our boat while we fuck everyone below you. And people are signing up for it because they know this does not include everyone. I know for a fact, they must know it. They know this is not a language of equity. They've seen how not just the financial inequality that's grown through this period, but all sorts of inequalities have grown through this period, and they know it. So I look at this as basically the executive order saying, you few elite Black people, we're fucking your entire race, but here's a place for you. We have a place for you to be safe, as long as you're from a historical Black college or a university of tribal colleges. As long as you've been vetted through that process, you may find yourself in a safe harbor with us while we screw the rest of your brothers and sisters. That to me is disgusting. And I also want to say that what Jessica said about capitalism being capitalism, yes, and this is even worse. in Section 8, Biotechnology, Regulation, Clarity, and Efficiency. Advances in biotechnology are rapidly altering the product landscape. The complexity of the current regulatory system for biotechnology products can be confusing and create challenges for businesses to navigate. To improve the clarity and efficiency of the regulatory process for the biotech products and to enable products and further societal goals identified, basically they go on to say, how can we remove restrictions and make it easier for people to bring this stuff to market? And they even mention, and in that discussion, we want to include engaging with developers and external stakeholders. They don't mean us. They mean big business. And so they're basically saying, we have all these unproven technologies that we must use, and I want to say why I think they must use them. And we have to develop them, and I think there's a reason they have to develop them. And I don't think it's just transhumanism, although I think transhumanism is a feature of it, but not because it's transhumanist, but it's because workers must be turned into tools and ultimately replaced completely by tools. And that is a dynamic that capitalism has built within it. So I do believe that the same process that has led to the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline and the war in Ukraine has led to this document, because I can go back to 2018 and say they put in the National Defense Strategy document, when they were talking about Russia and China being the big enemies, competition with them in big data analytics, competition with them about development of AI, and competition with them about biotechnology. And that's what I think is really pushing this sort of aggressive agenda. And so when they have to eliminate all regulation from these companies, they're basically saying, we got to get all the red tape out of the way so we can fucking do anything we want. If you want to turn mosquitoes into things that can inject vaccines into people, which they are developing and working on that, they're going to do it. If you want to, they're saying it's going to be a bad flu season. They're now developing quadrivalent flu vaccines, mRNA 1010, which basically has 4 different things like that it recognizes, but all mRNA based. They're going to do that. That's just in the vaccine section. But they want to eliminate any restriction on developing any of these things, which are going to make GMOs out of our food, make GMOs out of us. And like I say later, I want to talk more about what sort of crazy ideas, not crazy, disgusting ideas they have for how they plan on utilizing these technologies for humans.
Just on the stakeholders, I mean, they give you like a really concise list of who they're consulting. Those in industry, as Andy mentioned, great. Academia, great. Non-governmental organizations, right? The whole nonprofit industrial complex is what that's referring to. Communities, filler, meaningless word. Labor unions, that's worked out great the past couple of years, right? And then state, local, tribal, and territorial governments, which in some sense, yeah, I agree with you, Andy, like that's the sort of few elites that get to be temporarily on the lifeboat while the rest of those communities gets absolutely fucked. It's also, the co-opted youth in those communities who, through no fault of their own, really, right, like have been largely captured, like both economically and in terms of ideology. Meanwhile, like the elders and the people in those communities who have a true understanding about the history of resistance are pushed to the sidelines, right? And it's, another generation and they're going to be gone. Yeah. So, and then I also just wanted to, on your, where was I going to go? On the capitalism thing, let's see, where is it? I mean, I was really interested in this section on like bio products or bio-based products, right? Is what and I did a little bit of research there. Could go a lot deeper, but so when they say bio-based products, they're talking about, I mean, it has bio in the word, so it sounds like, oh yeah, it's like biology, it's natural, it's nature, the body. It's commercial or industrial products composed partly or wholly of biological products or renewable domestic agricultural or forestry materials, right? So it's basically just a greenwashing term. So it's stuff like adhesives, construction materials, fuel additives, fertilizer, plastics, paint, solvents, right? Like all of this shit that's largely bad, right? For the environment, for human health. But I was kind of looking into the history of it, and I think this kind of ties into one of the points you were making, Ria, like capitalism and the way that it's, it's not like an organic flow of incentives or money or priorities, right? So like part of what this does is like incentivize and mandate that all federal agencies, right, have to purchase or like increase the number of contracts that they're engaging with in terms of anything like bio-based, whether it's like technology, agriculture, health, all of it. It's already mandated that these things are purchased, right? Like it's already controlled. I was looking back a little bit at the Farm Security and Rural Investment Act, which is 2002, right? This is like 2 decades ago. And it's all about like green, quote unquote, green purchasing, programs, procurement preference programs, right? Like just directing all of this stuff so that there's no alternative, right? And then this is just kind of upping the ante, to the infinite degree. Okay, last point that I'll just touch on, and then Eduardo, you should jump in. But with the diversity stuff and the workforce that you brought up, Andy, like, I mean, I agree about the kind of elite thing. Like, here's a couple of, shiny black and brown and female or whatever faces for, that we can slap on the cover of the textbook, so to speak. But I think also like, what section is this in? Section 6, I think. When they're talking about the workforce and expanding training and education opportunities for all Americans in biotechnology and biomanufacturing, like to me, this is like the equivalent of, what we've talked about in education of like the teachers literally like laying the bricks of the prison, right? Like they're going to have the youth, including a lot of diverse youth, code, right? Like there's all this pressure, right, to like increase STEM funding. Oh, we got to get female coders. We got to get Black coders. This plan, it says, shall promote the implementation of formal and informal education and training, career and technical education, and expanded career pathways. And it's, all the infrastructure is already there in K through 12, in higher education. And it's also, almost every single higher education institution now has a diversity and equity department or program. So it's all already there, right? And so it's just another like way of harvesting that labor until they don't even need the labor anymore, and then then you're really fucked.
This was not so. This thing is not in a vacuum. There was something written by the Center for the New American Security, put something out. I think it was in the last year, basically saying that in the area of the bioeconomy and biotechnology and biomanufacturing, they were writing, China already dominates global production of active pharmaceutical ingredients for generic drugs. Western nations continue to lead in biotechnology, but the United States needs to, quote, focus on improving access to equipment at the core of the biorevolution, computing and data sources used in genomics, and hard infrastructure used in DNA synthesis and fermentation. They go on to say, the United States is at a relative disadvantage in the field of biotechnology compared to adversaries like China, risking ceding American leadership over one of the most powerful and transformative fields of technology in recent memory. And now, of course, they speak of it also as powerful in terms of running the economy. But I want to talk about something that I've mentioned before. But what I'm going to show here is what their plan is for the U.S. military. But this is not, in my opinion, whatever they have in plan for the U.S. military is also their plan for the U.S. workforce. And this is in 2019. And I'm going to show you this document that connects up with something, because I found this through the stuff I found from the Center for New American Security. Let's see, share screen. Okay, so the title of it is Cyborg Soldier 2050, Human Machine Fusion and the Implications for the Future of the Department of Defense. Here are some of the US Army, Chemical Biological Center, government stuff, kind of connected to DOD, Department of Defense. You can notice the date, October 2019, all right? And so here are I'll just go quickly to some of the scenarios that they have for what they're trying to develop. And they're actually talk about its use. So right here, let's see. Basically, the framework for the use of all this is they talk about the direct neural enhancement of the human brain for remote two-way data transfer. And that's the overview of the various 4 scenarios you're going to see for how they plan on implementing this biotechnology in the military. And if they're using this in the military, they're going to use it on the workforce. So here's number 1. Number 1 is case study number 1, ocular enhancement for imaging and sight and situation awareness. In this scenario, individual vision is enhanced to enable sensory perception beyond the normal visible spectrum. Enhanced individuals would also have the ability to analyze images from various wavelengths to discriminate targets and allow identification in complex and cluttered environments. Computational capabilities which would allow for target identification, selection, and data sharing with other individuals or military systems are envisioned. So remember, what they're talking about here is human data collection, which is connected to a computational brain as well, and all those systems working back and forth. That's the plan. It's AI connected to your brain and what you see for situational and tactical awareness, so they can figure out who to hit and when to hit them, kind of thing. That's number 1. Number 2, case study number 2, restoration and program muscular control through an optogenetic bodysuit sensor web. In this scenario, muscle control is enhanced through a network of emplaced subcutaneous sensors that deliver optogenetic stimulation through programmed light pulses. The enhancement is best described as an implanted digital sensing and simulation system that is coupled with external sensors, boost inserts, and wearables, which are linked to central computational controller. And again, if you're getting tired and if you're finding yourself, fatigued, you're connected to a computer that can find ways of sending you signals to get your body more in motion. That's case study 2. Case study 3, there's 4 of them. Auditory enhancement for communication and protection. In this scenario, enhancement of auditory capabilities would occur through direct replacement or modification of the middle ear bone and cochlea. Enhancement would afford individuals greater dynamic range of hearing, which would protect or filter overexposure and increase sensitivities to low amplitude sounds. They also are saying, like, you're getting shelled all around you, you can't hear right, we can help you during that process, and you can still fight the war while you're in, getting hit by IEDs and stuff like that. Number 4, direct neural enhancement of the human brain. In this scenario, neural implants for brain-computer interfacing would allow for seamless interactions between individuals and secondary assets called machines. I mean, I don't know how you could be any more clear. And so this is 2019. And they get COVID to allow them to collect all these genomics. They get all of us to agree to inject ourselves with mRNA bullshit. It could not be more clear that this is the plan, not for just soldiers, but this is the plan for those motherfuckers on the tribal colleges who basically don't go into the boat. Well, this is what's going to happen to your brothers and sisters. They're going to get wearables. They're going to be neural implant, and that's if they have that's to get a job. Because if you want a job, you're going to have to get the implant. If you don't want a job, fuck you, get out of here. We have a place for you somewhere else, and that's the future. And it's disgusting, but it's right here. It was in 2019 that they were planning this. Now they're right here and they're on the doorstep of it. That was Cyborg 2050. I think 2050 is well later than what they plan to do. But this is an act of war. Of course, it's an act of war against China and Russia, but it's an act of war on workers. And that's how we have to see this.
Yeah, I wrote it in the margins of the workforce, like training thing, conscript the youth, conscript the working class, because that's what it is. It's military technology. I mean, this whole thing, it's DOD, every other paragraph, right? I mean, it's all of the government agencies. But yeah, it's horrifying, and it's transhumanist as fuck. I mean, so plain. to see.
I guess what you've just shared is just so scary, but I want to show a video now. But this whole plan, right? I was reading an article in NPR. This was to boost semiconductor chips manufacturing, as well as like chips to implement into people's bodies as well. But so I'm going to read just a little bit of this.
Eduardo, just before you go on, I want to be clear, because this hasn't been mentioned before, but this executive order is a subset of directives that come from chip manufacturing, actually. So when you go to chips, it's not just a segue. Actually, this executive order is seen as lower on the totem pole than a higher order for we have to get chip manufacturing underground, right away, because Taiwan's going to go down. So chip manufacturing is directly related to the thing to what we're talking about, because it's not biotech going to chips. It's like, we got to get chips, so now we got to get the biotech to do it.
I was going there, and I appreciate you saying that, because because the largest manufacturer of chips, by the way, is in Asia. It's in Asia, and yes, so this is going to be, if this comes to, like, all of this Taiwan stuff is related, because if there is a war between China and the USA is going to be screwed as it comes to manufacturing these chips, because they're the ones who are producing all of this, and so they're trying to race to get there before it's shut down and you don't have access to these chips. And everything is included, right? Like every high-tech gadget that we use currently, from this computer, from our phones, to everything is being used. So that's why there's like $50 billion being allocated to this semiconductor chip manufacturing in the USA from its current production hub in the East Asia. Now, so I want to share how chips are important. Of course, I'm going to get into like what you talked about, Cyborg stuff, but in a bit I will get there. Just before I get there, though, like what this article that I'm reading from NPR is what would happen if the USA lost its access to semiconductor chips imported from it. Life would come to a standstill if we don't have the chips, which is like oil. This article is from NPR. It is the resource that runs our electronics, and effectively that runs our life in many ways. A car has 100 of chips in it, and we're not talking about the most sophisticated cars. We're not even talking about electric cars. We're talking about your average car, which is now very high tech these days. Television sets, phones, games, everything. And if we don't have this CHIPS Act, which is also related to this, we have a potential to slow, it goes far enough to prevent the potential slowdown. So there's a lot of investment in all of this. I'm not going to go into the whole thing of this article. I can just share the link to it. But I want to share this video first of how semiconductors are the brains of modern electronics, and then I'll go into this other Cyborg stuff. And semiconductors are essential components of electronic devices, enabling advanced communications, computing, healthcare, military systems, transportations, and clean energy. Hint, hint for people who want to, and countless other applications. So let's just look at this. Oh, I should mention, this is SEIA, which sounds like this, CIA. So this is the Semiconductor Industry Association. So this is industry association.
One tiny technology drives the biggest breakthroughs. Semiconductors are changing the way we transcend distance and travel distances. They help ensure our well-being and our way of being. From farms to factories to front lines, semiconductors are poised to help us be smarter, more resourceful, and faster than ever before. Decades of innovation have made the semiconductor industry among America's most important, propelling semiconductors to become a top U.S. export. American semiconductor companies account for nearly half of global sales, and nearly 2 million American jobs depend on the semiconductor industry. Its value to our economic growth, supply chain security, and technology leadership is undeniable. But its future is not guaranteed. SIA is committed to not merely preserving the vitality of the semiconductor industry in the U.S., but broadening it. We're working in Washington, D.C. and capitals around the world to promote 4 key policy priorities: increasing federal investments in semiconductor research, incentivizing semiconductor manufacturing in the U.S., expanding access to global markets, and strengthening America's technology workforce. SIA is striving to ensure the future of semiconductor technology is full of opportunity and optimism.
Mm.
Well, that woman looked very optimistic about it.
Always like the same, like weird, like I don't know, like it starts out with the simulation, it's all techie, and then it's like, let's pan back to the drone shot. Like every video, like no matter what company it's from, it's always the same shit. One thing that I noticed about that I don't know, I guess scares me. Well, there's many things that scare me about that, but it's like when it comes to this stuff, I mean, obviously the liberals are not going to help us. Like, that is that's long gone. That ship has sailed. But so much of this, like especially that video right there, is so the framing, right, of like it's like bringing American jobs home, economy, like you can just see how it appeals to the Republican base. And it's like, yeah, okay, some of the right wingers might have been on our side when it came to like vaccine mandates, but when you pan back and you look at this biotechnology stuff from a wider lens, it's just I personally don't feel very optimistic watching that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we have so many political weaknesses on all fronts. The left, which I think at least got the idea, I thought had gotten the idea that we are against our own country in a war, and we want to remove our country from that war at the very least. And revolutionaries were supposed to understand, no, we want to defeat our government in war and turn imperialist war abroad into civil war at home. Like at least the revolutionaries are supposed to get that. I don't know if they get that anymore with Ukraine sometimes. But now they've solidarized themselves with the state because now they love vaccines, and they love Operation Warp Speed, and they love Pfizer, and they think technology is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and they think this is all being granted. And now as the state is fusing with these companies, well, that's almost like a kind of socialism, and so the left is fucked on it. And to the extent that the right still falls for, this is Chinese communists coming to us, we've got to fight the Chinese, we've got to stop the Chinese, we have to engage in the competition to have better jobs here in the United States at the expense of the Chinese. Well, then good luck with that, because they're going to get you to do their bidding too. They're just going to use a different boogeyman. And there are so many different weaknesses on our side. I still will say that the diversity of views, if we are able to communicate openly with each other, has the potential to allow us to take the best of all this stuff and build something that I would say we could insulate ourselves and no longer be put into the red and blue sections of this country. But I'm not optimistic of that development as we see things fracturing around us rather than coming together. So
yeah, I mean, it's amazing like how much the cultural, like the normative cultural discourse still operates under this assumption that like American leadership is good. Like in any context, in any example ever, and this thing, it's like, in the first paragraph of the order, all of this shit benefits all Americans. No, it fucking doesn't.
Nope.
And the global community, and that maintains U.S. technological leadership and economic competitiveness, as if those two things could ever be compatible. That like the health and well-being of the global community, populations in Africa, China, wherever, right? Like that is somehow compatible with U.S. technological and economic leadership and competitiveness. No, it's mutually exclusive.
I mean, I'm so it's good that we're talking about this because I want people to look at the links to see who is at that site with the video we saw that includes all of the members of that association, all of the companies that are a part of that group, and so I'll just more of like if you people want to zoom in and try, but if people want to like really do their own research and go into it more, they can see that these are the technologies that people who are advancing this. You know? And with this biotech comes as well as the rise in the conversation around, which I want to get to, as far as you were talking about cyborgs, like the rise of microchipping and the technology around that. And if people still don't believe like COVID was this pivotal year for it, like there was microchipping happening in COVID-19 times for vaccine passports, and people don't want to. But there's the COVID vaccine passport. There was there's this company called Disruptive Subdermals. They tested COVID-19 vaccine passport and in their bioglass coated in an NFC microchip designed to get implemented under people's human skin, which I want to show another video on that. And so I want to just quickly show, where is it here? So I'm just trying to give examples, real stuff happening out in the world. This is a company. Let's look at it.
We want to give the world access to a super useful technology that really has the potential to transform healthcare and in particular remote diagnostics in fascinating ways.
Disruptive Subdermals is a company specialized in implantable microelectronics. We are particularly focused on tiny injectable chip implants that don't have a battery. The way they work is that you inject them under the skin, and then when you want to do a reading with using the sensors of the implant, you just swipe on the outside of your skin with your smartphone. That activates the implant, it does a reading, and then the data is transferred to the phone. In this way, we want to enable people to read their vital body parameters at any time and in any setting, really.
The purpose of this study is to compare temperature measurements via this new subdermally implanted device compared to traditional temperature measurement techniques. In a subdermal implant, you have a much more consistent environment, the sensor is in place, and it's inside the body.
So I have two implants that are temperature sensors that measure my body temperature.
I have one in my stomach and one in my right arm. There are very small chip implants, roughly the size of a rice grain.
It's very easy to read it. You just basically swipe your phone over the chips.
The installation was actually fairly simple. I almost didn't even realize it was put in until it was done.
Anyone who's used to tweezing their eyebrows or hitting their small toe on something, that's so much worse.
I go into the app. I go to read temperature. So I'll just open it up. And there we go. Now it says 33 degrees is the abdomen sensor value. And it's that simple.
This should be the way to find problems in your body and help you live longer and healthier.
I wanted to be part of the study to make sure that we are moving towards a more technical and advanced society.
Potential clinical applications for this type of device is home monitoring, for instance. In an outpatient clinic situation, you could use implants to have a much better surveillance of the patient.
Our technology is both cheap and robust, as has a very long lifetime. We think it can be valuable for millions and millions of people. We have set the ambitious goal that we'd like to see 1 billion people implanted by the year 2030.
Fuck these people.
Have these people ever heard of a thermometer? I mean, Jesus fuck.
I mean, it's disgusting.
You know what I've been noticing a lot recently, which is probably just, because I wanted to get a watch. I haven't worn a watch in probably 15 years, because we all have our phones, right? But I've been wanting to get one for my yoga classes so that I don't have to constantly be like looking up at the clock, because I'm obviously keeping time. And I've just kind of been noticing recently, like everybody wears is it like the Fitbit or the iWatches?
Yep.
Everybody really is wearing them. And I mean, I don't want to go on too much because I think a lot of our listeners like are pretty familiar with the fact that this stuff is a very slippery slope, and it's absolutely real. And but I also think of dogs, right? We've been microchipping dogs and cats, I think, too, maybe. I don't know. Do they routinely microchip cats? Probably. Which is totally normalized. It's, considered safe and the responsible thing to do. Like all the shelters do it. And I'm not saying that there's nothing to that argument. My dog's microchipped, although I didn't choose to do that. She was already microchipped when I adopted her. But, in similar ways to how like they test stuff out on the military, and then those technologies filter into the general population. There's a lot of parallels too with like the way that we treat animals and the microchipping there. Like it has been, it's sort of a test run, right? They've tried it on the animals and they've been widely successful. And then, there's obviously lots of parallels in terms of other, agriculture and stuff like that. Just makes me think of, the metaphor of like the slaughterhouse, right? And the prison, right? These like invisible prisons, and even like, the don't be a sheep, right? Like literally, literally you think of how the sheep and the cattle in these industrial agriculture facilities, right? Which is like part of this executive order. A big part of it is agriculture and food supply. It's another mirror for what they are doing to us.
Yeah, and in this case, when I look at the Cyborg military project as the goal, and that's what I believe that what we're seeing here with this video is the testing of the implementation of it more generally into the population, and basically it's even more data collection, more continuous data collection. These people continue to think of a phone like it's some kind of chalkboard that you're writing something down on, instead of basically this is centralizing data at a central point, which is what they're talking about in the Cyborg document. How do they take individual inputs and centralize them at some place that then gets all that stuff and then processes it, makes decisions, and then goes back and sends that stuff back out with directions or course corrections or whatever it tries to do, whatever it's going to do to like affect your muscles so that you become stronger at that time or get some sort of endorphin hit. This is now what they're testing on a broader population, because they do have plans to use it on workers and soldiers.
It's weird too, like the underlying moral association. Like when I know the video is scripted, but I do see this especially in like very techy places like San Francisco and Seattle, where like when they ask the people, why are you doing this? Their answer is like, because it's more technological. I forget exactly how they phrased it, but it's like, hang on there, like back up a step. Like why is more technological automatically a good thing? Like there's just like a jump in logic. And I hear that like, development, right? Like that's been a big one for many decades. Like development is good. When in reality, when the US goes and develops other, national economies, it's the equivalent of just exploiting their people and stealing their natural resources, right? Like 10 out of 10 times.
Yep.
Yeah. And I see that just heavily playing out with the technological lingo. Like, why is it good? Like, explain it to me.
I just see. I mean, I was still looking. I haven't finished reading everything on the executive order. I think I will look at it more. I scanned it, I picked sections, and I saw, well, maybe I want to go into this area. But if this stuff will be accelerated even by just pushing these careers onto Black colleges, as I mentioned, in order to have people to do this, because we care about Black people. So they're going to have people get trained in this, and it's going to be pushed onto these Black colleges to profile people so that people can be more in the system and still enlarge and create this whole prison industrial complex even further by profiling people. So it's kind of ironic that people then it's just to imprison us more and make us digital slaves. That's what this is all about,
Yeah.
I don't know how people could not see this as any of that. This is just more into this Orwellian digital dystopia. So,
and it just only convinces me again, or reaffirms the notion that any fundamental change of society is going to have to be a dispensing of all this technology that we're talking about, that they so look as central, the circuitry and microchips. Any world that requires microchips for all of us to be in is not a world we want to go towards. That's a world they want to bring us to. So I do really believe that a revolution is going to have to dispense with those things.
Yeah. And this is also about war, right?
Yeah.
This is about with other countries too. I mean, they said in Section 11, assessing threats to the USA and bioeconomy, and they talk about. I mean, it's so many things. It's just it's covering so many areas.
Yeah.
It's about our society controlling. It's about war. It's about competition. It's about
and dissemination of information. I thought also worth mentioning is just a little teeny little part of it, but to provide to the general public plain language information regarding the regulatory roles, responsibilities, and processes of each agency, blah, 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 biotechnology. It's like, we have to, I mean, A, it's just so infantilizing and gross, and B, it's just like, just tell me you're going to brainwash us without telling me you're going to brainwash us. Like, ugh.
Yeah.
And on the Eduardo on the Black colleges thing, just because there's so much climate stuff in this executive order. So I've been trying, I don't even know why, but I've been trying to pitch this op-ed to like academic publications that's like, the title is going to be Unpopular Opinion, Why Class, Not Racial Politics Should Be the Primary Framework for Effective Climate Pedagogy. And I sent it to the Chronicle of Higher Education, just like the main one last week. Of course, like nobody wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole. Because nobody wants to. What's that?
Did you write this?
Well, I haven't written it, but I have like an outline, and you like send like a pitch or whatever, and then someone wants to pick it up. I mean, I talk about this framing all the time in every diversity meeting, and on campus, at conferences, and it's just like, yeah, and I feel like I have more legs to stand on now that I'm here, like teaching. Like I have a comparison, like I've had experience now teaching at a massive, like medical industrial hub, university where it's, in a liberal, highly populated urban place. And then I've had experience out here with working class, predominantly white, but working class populations. And it's like they're trying to shove this diversity crap down the throats of a Republican, like land-based, population, and then they're like, why isn't it working? Everyone's so racist. And it's like, no, they're in poverty. Like, it's so frustrating. But I don't know, it's another.
I think you could, if you at this time I'm a little bit just overwhelmed with what's going on at my house, but I'm sure if you write something like that, Jess, I'm sure especially academic liberals are going to attack you for being white, a white woman writing that, something like that, just that it should be. So if you feel like we could write something, and I'd love to co-write something, if you want to pitch something like that, just let me know. And sometime I'm done with this, I'd love to just jump on that.
Yeah, let's do it. I don't know. It's like the people who need to hear that message don't want to hear it. Like that, none of the mediums through which you can reach them. I'm an English teacher, so I understand, like, know your audience. So I can frame it, when I have the opportunity at conferences and stuff. But then nobody actually takes it and runs with it, right? It's just like, even if they sort of get it. But anyway.
Well, I have probably another title for that paper of yours. Probably should be Why You Should Fire Me or Cancel Me.
Yeah.
That's the simpler title.
Yeah.
But I do think that's worth pushing out there, but watch your back.
I don't have anything else for us to add to this. I think it's extensive. There's so many areas, so many angles we can go on this. I
appreciate Joe Biden for his honesty.
I feel like he had a ghostwriter.
Yes, I don't think he wrote any of this, but the thing that is Biden is this group of coterie of people with some old guy at the head. I want to thank them for their honesty, and I agree with you, Eduardo. If anybody wants to look and ask, is this shit we're talking about real? Just read this thing, and maybe if you read it and you somehow go, oh yeah, cool. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, and it is really readable. I mean, it's like 10 or so pages. It's not particularly jargony. I think people, like, wherever you're coming from, people should read it.
Yeah.
And I do. It's interesting timing too, because like so much going. I mean, there's always so much going on, but it just feels like this came out September 12th.
Yeah.
The 29th when we're filming this. So it's been about 2 weeks, and in that 2 weeks, there's been crazy hurricanes. Major new leadership in Italy, Nord Stream, so much going on. I don't know, probably a lot of people might have missed it.
Yeah, well, I did. I'm glad somebody brought it to my attention. It was good to discuss it with you all.
I wish, just maybe it's because I was a part of it. I wish the people who, like there was this time with California with Proposition 37 and all of that, like labeling GMOs. And I just wish those people would wake up and be on board with this, because I don't know whatever happened to those people. Those were the people I was hanging out with. And I think of 2010, 2020, 11, that was a time when I think it was my community and SF with permaculture folks that they would completely say this is wrong, that we're messing with nature, that we're going, and I don't see them speaking out, at least in this area this time.
I think in the same way that 60s radicals became I don't know, what do you call them, baby boomers, or in a sense, I think they did wake up and join. Like, I think they woke up and said, I don't want anything to do with fighting this thing. I just want to get on board and hope for the best.
I'll include an article, just being a little bit vain here. I'll include an article where I was in Gilroy protesting Syngenta here in California, and I had a group of 15 people, a small group that were protesting. and I organized it for anyone that is interested. Where I remember it was so important for us. Monsanto, Syngenta, all of these big companies, and Occupy Monsanto, Occupy the Democrats, Occupy New York. It was, Occupy Wall Street. It was. So now where are they? This is genetic engineering is happening. Our DNAs are being now. Biotechnology is for cloning. Biotechnology is for DNA harvesting. Biotechnology is for xenotransplanting. Right? Messing with animals. Biotechnology is going to be in food, apples, papaya. Everything is being in the process of that is happening. So I think, to me, it's just sad that I don't see that community standing up against this. So anyhow, it's just a thought that keeps lingering in my mind because I was reading on it. So
Bring back Rachel Carson.
I don't know. All right. Any last thoughts?
Just let people know that isn't next week going to be the Jessica and Eduardo show.
And Kenny.
I don't think Kenny's going to be there. I think Kenny's not going to be there. And I think about it now.
All right.
Why?
We'll be here to hold it down.
Yeah. It's exciting.
As long as Eduardo doesn't make me read the intro and outro.
Maybe you. Maybe. All right. That's it. That does it for this week's episode. What's Left is a weekly political podcast at channel challenge in the mainstream left. We post information about our topics and our guests in the episode notes where we found this episode, or on our blog at what-s-left.whatnot.com. You can find past episodes to this podcast /channel there and connect with us. I remind folks, if you like anything you've heard here, please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications to any of our platforms on Spotify, iTunes Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, BitChute, Odyssey, YouTube, Rumble, or Telegram. And YouTube has censored us in the last video, so you can find any of our information in the episode notes or on the blog to this, wherever you found this episode, wherever you are listening or viewing. And if you give us feedback about something you've heard or suggest something, or like to give us feedback or suggest something for us to cover, contact us through our blog. I'm Eduardo with co-host, teacher, and socialist Andy Davidson, and writer and teacher Jessica. Kenny will be with us next week or in 2 weeks, maybe. I'm not sure. You can find our social media handles at Don Eduardo Barca on Instagram and at ZepDKE for Kenny, and Jess's social media handle at Twitter at JHomie89. All right, that does it, and we'll see you all next time. Ciao.
So do you know the card company Love Pop?
Mm-mm.
So they do all these cards that pop up things.
Oh.
So this one I got for them. It's like birthday party in Present City.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is like 14 different cards that are like a countdown to your birthday.
Oh, cool.
So
like an advent calendar. We're
at day 3 now. Then day 2, right? And each time there's a little story because it's a little party. All these little characters. Always the jokester is Grape and Blueberry are the first guests to arrive on the island by shipping themselves inside a giant gift box. Timmy and Mako can't imagine what's in such a large box until Grape and Blueberry pop out shouting, "Surprise! Now let's get this party started." So it's got little characters in it, and you put together, like she's putting together a whole zoo, of like things, because it's 14 cards. But the final card is this one.